Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us at Space Cowboy Books Online for another installment of Flash Science Fiction Nights. I'm your host, John Paul, and this night we have an absolutely wonderful lineup. We've got Jonathan Nevair, Robin Rose Graves, and I, Jiang, all going to share some science fiction flash with you. We're going to open up the show with Jonathan Nevair. Jonathan Nevair is a speculative fiction author and, as Dr. Jonathan Wallace, an art historian and professor of art history at Moore College of Art and Design. His space opera trilogy, Windtide, was inspired by ancient Greek texts and myths and released in 2021. Jaddy's Wager, Book 2, is a finalist in this year's Indie Ink Awards in the category Writing the Future We Need, Non-Binary Representation. His latest novel, Stellar Instinct, a standalone sci-fi thriller, is out now, and I'll drop a link for that in the chat. Jonathan has published several short stories since his fiction journey began, and his cyberpunk story, Cortellian Rain, will be included in the next volume of the Simultaneous Times anthology from Space Cowboy Books. In fact, all of the amazing authors from tonight are going to be featured in that collection, so look for that late this summer. I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan to read his story, The Runner. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you so much, Jean Paul. The Runner. They're on to me. The one across the street, leaning against the wall, pretending to read the news feed. She's glanced my way 3 times. I caught the glint of her Metrix contact lenses reflecting the illuminations off the hover billboards. Green and red light flickering over the top of the handheld tablet as the optical coatings caught the light. 2 looks, I could let go as a double take, but 3, equally spread apart over a minute? No, she's working for Galax. I've got her reflection on the hyperglass of the railer shop ahead to my right. She's dressed like a nighter ready for a dance party, but without the flair. A little too, she's moving. Shit, I've got a tail. If I can make it past these club crowds, I can lose her. Tona 5 might have a reputation for a bustling nightlife, but that doesn't mean there aren't places where you can still disappear, especially when you're a runner like me. The district's alleys and back streets might not be safe for the weekenders, but for those of us in the business, it's home turf. If this one is working for Galax, then she'll be tapped into the civic authority's surveillance system. Might as well be a fly buzzing around the dance district with that access. I'll bet her Metrix contacts are displaying a view of every street within a 2-kilometer grid. She's probably watching me right now from the building feeds. Heck, I'd put 100 on a gravity wheel that she's thinking she's got me just where she wants me. Hey pal, want a guess hit? I'm good. I wave my hand in the universal gesture for not a customer. The Latani dealer retracts a thorny blue appendage holding the juice shot. 1 knock of that stuff would keep a clubber moving like they're inside a blender until the sun comes up. The Latani folds its long tendril back over the 7 others coiling around its rotund and seated figure. His face, with its glowing yellow eyes and deep prickly skin, disappears as inside its built-in skin hood creeped up over its head. It returns to its hidden position, lying in wait and coiled ready to strike the next passerby. I stop and turn. Fuck it. Actually, give me 2. The hood folds back and a tendril curls out holding the vials. A second appendage rolls along the pavement, resting between my feet. I drop the bit chips into the cup and hold out an open palm. Stinging hairs glide over my skin as the vials are placed inside. Gosh K, the dealer says in the 3-ranged choral voice, reciting the galactic-wide ward in Latani for those imbibing. I nod and with a glance back to check my tail, hurry off toward the alley. Don't worry, I said as I make for the turn. It's not me who needs the protection. My tail gained distance with my delay. I can feel her closing behind me. It's just instinct, but I know it. I need to check what I'm dealing with. I look back. Shit, she's a booster, the new model, all pimped out with the plugs. She'll tear me apart. That much is clear by the synth muscles bulging through her clothes, not to mention her grin. Fucking Galax mods, make these chasers into nightmares. My thumb and index finger loosen the cap on one of the vials as I hasten my pace. I've gotten good at doing that while moving from my time in the clubs. Crowded bodies, pounding music, flashing lights. I can pop Gesh without missing a step in the rhythm of the DJ's beats. This Galax thug probably thinks I'm going to pop both and make a run for it. I turn the corner into the alley and pour out the first vial. As soon as the liquid hits the pavement, I take off at a sprint. After 10 paces, I scurry back to the edge of the corner and slip up along the wall, making myself as flat as I can. Galax always wins. That's what the logos and commercials claim. Well, let's see about it this time. I loosen the second cap, eyes on the corner. She blurs past, bolting at full throttle. Damn, these new models are fast. Like a fish to the lure, I turn the corner back the way I came. It'll take her a good minute to realize I disrupted her feed with the guest juice. That gas might be invisible, but its fumes disrupt. Bam! Going somewhere. Dazed, my eyes watering and cheeks around my nose already swelling from the scraping smack across my face, I gaze up from where I lay on the street. The Litani is over me, standing at its full height. Hood down, his multispectral eyes glare into me. A spiky pain hits my fingers as the vial is ripped from my grip. A quick twirl of the tip with their appendage and the Litani tightens the cap and slips it under a fold of skin. I shake off the pain and start to rise to make a break for it. Bam! Not so fast, another voice says. The air leaves my chest as a thick boot pushes down. It feels like a boulder crushing my insides. The Galax agent smiles. Amateur move, runner. A double tail, I grunt. You only marked me because I gave it to you on a platter. The reflection of the dance club sign shimmers off the surface of her eyes. Metrics contacts, I whisper. That's right. And this. She reaches into my coat pocket and pulls out the case, opening it and holding the thin golden stem containing my precious Gargo. Is mine. No, you can't. You don't even know what it is, do you? Her boot pushes harder on my chest. Stop. Can't breathe. I reach up with both arms, more as an expression of desperation than to try and grab anything. I manage to grab a pant leg. What do you think, partner? I follow her face as she nods at the Lintari. Should we give him a hit of heg-heg? Maybe put him by the docks for the scrappers and scurries? A blue appendage appears over my face, untwisting a cap. No! I shift and swing my head back and forth, resisting. Tentacles pry my mouth open and the knockout drug trickles over my tongue. The distinctive sting of gingery tasting liquid starts the chemical reaction going. Kashke, she says, and releases her boot from my chest. I grope wildly with my hands, clutching dead air. The shimmering lights blur and fade off a pair of unforgiving Galax eyes.
Thank you. That was Jonathan Nevair with The Runner. Up next, we have Robin Rose Graves. Robin Rose Graves is a science fiction writer and poet. Previous works of hers have appeared in the Starlight Sci-Fi Coup Review, Starline Magazine, and our very own Simultaneous Times podcast. She is an editor at Android Press and a frequent contributor to Galactic Journey. You can find her on YouTube at The Book Wormhole, and I will drop a link to that in the chat. Robin is going to share a story with us tonight called Who Answers My Call? Over to you, Robin.
Thank you. All right. Who answers my call? Thrown like a rag doll into open atmosphere, I catch a quick glance of the ship as I tumble 360 degrees. It looks wrong. Of course it does. Something hit us at impact. One moment inside, seated at my station, next surrounded by alien sky. My shoulders hurt where my harness failed to keep me inside the craft. What hit us? Gathered intel led us to believe there was life on this planet, but intelligent enough to build an army, missiles to knock a UFO from the atmosphere? If so, this is a pretty shitty way to begin first contact. Not that any of us will make it to the ground to look our attackers in the eye. Captain, my radio crackles in my ear. I discern the word. To your right. I crane my head around, fighting the chaotic spin I've been thrown into. I expect another attack and brace myself. Not that I could stop a missile with my modest suit designed to be airtight, temperature controlled, and radiation proof in the instance that we were spaced. It's not meant for battle. I see the dark object fall into my right. A person, my crew. I reach my hand towards them and their glove reaches back. So close, but our fingertips slip from each other and I am falling further away. Tears prick at my eyes. Maybe it's the air pressure, but more likely it's knowing that my whole crew will be dead in seconds, if they aren't already. If I could have reached them, there was nothing I could do to help, but maybe holding hands as we met our end could have been some comfort. I'm facing up when I hit the ground. My suit absorbs some of the impact. Without it, I would have been a smudge, like a bug hitting the windshield. Gravity collapses my chest, squeezing all air from my lungs. I draw a slow breath, effort to refill my lungs. There's a dull ache, which doesn't seem so bad, except I can't move my fingers, my toes, and I realized I must have broken just about every bone there is to break. the collective pain too much for my brain to compute. My suit remains intact, protecting me from alien air, but I can't move, and eventually I will starve to death. I try my radio. Sato, Kaufman, Velez, do you copy? I pause, allowing time for an answer. I list off more names from the crew. Every word presses further on my bruised ribs, burning in agony. I listen to dead radio, stifling my cries of pain. The ground shakes, thunderous booms. At first, I think it's the pieces of my ship showering around me. I pry open my eyes, but see only an empty blue. The planet quakes. My mouth has grown dry from calling for help, but still I manage one last weak cry. Please, help! I blink, and suddenly the sky is filled with a giant face, humanoid but with too many arms, too many eyes, no nose or mouth. A hand reaches towards me, and I realize what I see before me is God. Little one, what are you doing? The parent signs to their offspring. The child has fallen behind on their walk, always wandering off. Curiosity left dangerously unchecked. Playing, the child signs back. They hold an odd-looking object they didn't have earlier when they left the domicile. What is that? The parent signs. The child stills their playing long enough to show the molded clump of metal. It passes for a toy, but an odd one at that. Leave it alone, it looks broken, the parent signs. The child discards it carelessly on the ground, only to walk a few steps and be distracted by something else. What is that? They sign, pointing towards the squirming thing at their feet. The parent huffs, but entertains their child's curiosity. Is it alive? The child signs. Yes, the parent answers, but I've never seen one before. The child picks it up, holding it in one of their many palms. Don't be cruel, put it out of its misery, the parent signs. The child doesn't want to. It's interesting and they want to play with it, just like the toy they found, whizzing above their head until they jumped high enough to swat it from the sky. This thing came from it, the child is certain, and they don't want to kill it. Dead things are no fun. Discreetly, so their parent didn't notice, they slipped the tiny animal into one of the folds of their moss covering. With one of their lower hands hovering close to their belly, they subtly signed to the new pets, I will take care of you. You're going to be my bestest friend, and we will play together and have lots of fun. And that's the end.
Thank you. That was Robin Rose Graves with Who Answers My Call. Next up, we have Jiang. Jiang is a Chinese-Canadian writer, a Nebula and Locus Award finalist, and an immigrant from Fujian. She is a member of HWA, SFWA, and Codex. Her work can be found in fantasy and science fiction, the dark, uncanny, among others. She is a recipient of the Odyssey Workshop's 2022 Fresh Voices Scholarship and the author of Ling Huan and I Am I, which I'm going to put a link in the chat to pre-order. I'm going to hand it over to I to read her story, Hunting Season.
Right. National Park 3065's law enforcement team imprisoned lichens regularly, but only for a night. The laws on hunting aren't too strict. I spent nights sneaking him pieces of imitation jerky, tossing them through the bar openings. Sometimes it wouldn't reach lichen's hands, toasted by electric currents rippling from the metal instead. My eyes followed the meat. It hissed before landing on the ground. It's better burnt, he said. Tastes more like real meat. The last time he tasted anything close to real meat was a few years back when he was still employed at the conservatory. Lichens and I headed to what was previously a national park, now recreational hunting grounds for leisure. We used to have set hunting seasons each year. Now every day was hunting season. A joy when work became stressful, but hunting with lichens was stressful by itself. Regardless, I had to deal with him since he was my uncle. Please keep an eye on him, said Lichen's wife, Marjorie, while balancing their child on her shoulders, a pained smile set on her face. I'll try. My tone was far from confident, and for good reason. Lichens was already in their family's hovercraft, his head plunged into the back seats as he tossed his daughter's toys into the storage area. You can tell what he puts first, Marjorie continues muttering to herself as she pressed the button to close the door. I noticed her what instead of who. I offered a small wave and encouraging smile as the steel door slid shut. I think Marjorie wants you to stay home more often, Lichens chuckled. Trust me, my presence at home doesn't make much of a difference. Before I climbed into the passenger seat, Lycans closed the many notifications that popped up on the large screen beside the wheel, obscuring the navigation system. I caught a glance before he wiped the screen clean, unpaid bills. My great-grandfather left us a message complaining about meat. We didn't have that anymore. Only man-made imitations were available now. It didn't taste too different. Lycans had a taste of fresh meat, oven-cooked, once. Animals still existed, but not where they were easily accessible like before. We had a conservatory for them. When we arrived at the National Park 3065, named after the year of its construction, Lycans rubbed the back of his neck as we pulled up to the front gate. Tall trees peeked from the top of the walls lined with barbed wire. I wasn't sure whether it was meant to keep the animals in or the humans out. The animals were unlikely to escape. They're programmed to remain within the walls. A swallow blinked at me from a tree. A flash of red from its eyes glinted in the sun. I passed Lycans my work ID, knowing his ID had long since expired. He waved it across the verification scanner. Welcome back, Lin Zhao. The words appeared with a picture of my face, unsmiling. Thanks. Lycans didn't meet my eyes. Don't mention it. Lycans floated the hovercraft above two others when we pulled into the parking area. Our feet met landing platforms as soon as we stepped out. Lycans pulled our equipment from the back of the craft. We didn't need it, but it never hurt to take precautions. You should get a craft too. I pulled on a rebound suit. If anything, beast or human were to charge at me with less than friendly intent, that suit's force field would propel them backwards. I'd never had the chance to experience it. Maybe when they're fully reliant on solar fuel. Lycans shook his head. Lycans love going for quick herbivores. I usually stuck to the carnivores. When the small pellet shot by my shooter, similar to the laser pointer at my workplace, met its first target, I jogged over and stroked the mane of the lion that lay motionless on the ground. On the side of my shooter, a small 4 flashed. I removed the pellet and popped it back into the shooter. As soon as the pellet left the lion's body, its circuits rebooted, propelling its mechanical body off the ground. Its muscular form rippled as it plunged back into the bushes. Lin, I watched the lion disappear before heading towards Lycan's voice. My body froze when I entered the clearing. Lycan stood over a brown and beige body with his shooter's pellet bloodied, pinched between two fingers. It's a deer. I recognized it from the records my great-grandfather left behind. What is it doing here? Isn't it gorgeous? Gorgeous wasn't the right word for it. I looked away from the deer. Blood trailed from the right eye socket where Lycans had shot it. When we shot the robots in the eye, they'd only short circuit or malfunction. Shooting an eye was a habit of Lycans that always placed him in the park's prison. Sorry, Marjorie, I failed again. I frowned. How did it get here? I guess this one must have missed the transportation craft. The expression on Lycan's face suggested he was lying. His lips twitched upwards, though his brow furrowed. What are the chances we can sneak it out? He said. His eyes were hungry and his lips were parted slightly. Lycans raised the pellet to his nose. The deer's only eye met mine. Its body trembled with labored breaths. Marjorie appeared in my mind. Her eyes rimmed red like the deer as the doors closed, similar to the closing door of the oven that cooked the deer Lycans snuck home from the conservatory. Lycans. When he turned, my shooter's pellet found its way to his eye. I much preferred the hyenas over deer. National Park 3065 security imprisoned Lycans. Again, this time he would remain. In the back of a hovercraft, I stroked the deer's head resting on my lap as we headed towards the conservatory. I munched on dry vegetables and offered a piece to the creature beside me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was Jiang with Hunting Season. Before that, we had Robin Rose Graves with Who Answers My Call. And opening the show was Jonathan Nevair with The Runner. Our next Flash Science Fiction Night will be coming up on June 27th. I'm going to drop a link to that in the chat right now. It will be a special collaboration with authors from Shacklebound Books. We are going to be featuring Mariska Pichette, Eric Fomley, and Jenna Hanchy. So be sure to join us for that on June 27th. Thank you, everyone, for your wonderful stories this evening. Thank you to our audience, and we hope to see you all next time for these brief and wonderful events. Thank you so much. Bye.